Hi,
Hey,
I'm Cherith,
and I'm Christian.
and we are House of Eads. What happened? Were you going to say it at the same time as me?
Yeah, so I didn't know if we wanted to do that 2 videos in a row where we're like, and we are House of Eads. It's like a thing we do all of a sudden.
No, it's not
No.
a thing we do.
Okay, good.
As you know, or maybe you don't know, but September is Suicide Awareness Month. I think there's actually a week that is Suicide Awareness Week, but I think people have just kind of turned September into just a mental health awareness and suicide awareness month as a whole.
Which is good.
And yeah, really good. And so we just felt like it was really important that we just kind of take a pause on our Journey to Baby Eads information and take a pause on just our normal content and take a few minutes to just kind of share with you what this month means to us, give you some encouragement. We want to give you some practical steps on how you can work through and move through depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. And then if you're someone who has never been through that before or don't really struggle in that area, how you can be a good support system to the people around you and the people close to you in your life that may be struggling in this area.
This is it's kind of a monster that's hiding in the dark. And the more we can talk about it, the more the monster shrinks because
Right.
it loses power.
That's good.
When people understand that it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay there,
Yeah.
then they know that they can do some of these practical things that we're going to talk about and it's going to help them, but they also don't have to be ashamed. We all experience sadness. We all experience overwhelm. We all experience things that are the base and the root, kind of like the very, if we bring it all the way down, anxiety is being overwhelmed. Depression is being so sad that you've lost your drive and your motivation to do things. Your apathy has completely taken over. And so I think in some way, shape, or form, we've all have experienced this. Mm-hmm. And so why not talk about something that we're all are going through right now?
If you are a Christian or if you've been a part of the church ever in your life, there has kind of been a stigma surrounding mental health and surrounding this topic of suicide, of depression, anxiety, any type of like mental illness. And I think that's something that Christian and I, again, are just very passionate about kind of breaking that stigma down and speaking truth and speaking reality into these things that we have kind of demonized and kind of created as these taboo subjects that we can't talk about because, you know, if you had enough faith or if you were praying enough or if you were reading your word enough or if you were closer with God, then you wouldn't be dealing with any of these things. And I just want to tell you that that is a lie. We are going to speak some life into you today, bring some encouragement to you. We're going to bring you some statistics, some scripture, and hopefully we will all walk away from this conversation feeling filled up, feeling encouraged, challenged, and more equipped to handle if we're dealing with this, or more equipped to partner with and come alongside the people in our lives that are dealing with these issues. So let's jump into some statistics.
Let's do it.
So all of these statistics are from the CDC website. Say what you want about them, but this is reality. This is facts and data on the subject of suicide and suicide attempts in the U.S. So in 2020, there were 45,979 deaths by suicide. That is 1 every 11 minutes. So by the time this video is over, depending on how long it is, that would mean that 1 or 2 people have committed suicide in just the time that we're sitting together today. In 2020, an estimated 12.2 million American adults seriously thought about suicide. 3.2 million planned a suicide attempt, and 1.2 million attempted suicide. Suicide was also in the top 9 leading causes of death for ages 10 through 64. And if we break that down a little bit more, it was the second leading cause of death for ages 10 through 14. So that's like 5th grade through 8th or 9th grade. And the second leading cause of death for ages 25 through 34. Those are pretty alarming statistics. You know, these are statistics from 2 years ago. Who knows what the statistics are today? But, you know, you turn on the news and there's bad things happening all around us.
Right.
And if you're dealing with these thoughts of depression and these thoughts of suicide, and thinking that your life is not valuable anymore and that you may as well just end it all of these external factors don't help any of that.
They weigh heavier on you. The bad news is, Cherith and I both have experienced this in our life. The good news is we're both here today to help other people with it.
Yeah.
And so I want to start by talking about my experience. So when I was younger, middle school, you know, I was very heavily bullied. And I was called names and just some terrible things. I don't even want to repeat them because it would be hurtful to people to hear the things that I was called. And on top of that, there were daily people hitting me and slapping me in the face, spitting on me. There was a point where a rumor basically, or like a joke was going around that I was a disease. And so no one wanted to be near me. And so, because if you sit next to me, then you're gonna die, right? And so, you know, that is very crushing for a young kid. This started back when I was like in first grade. Like it just kind of elevated and escalated as time went on. And it wasn't until like high school that I really was able to start like dealing with this stuff. But I hit a peak moment in middle school. There were so many rumors about me. There were so many people just thinking they could just do whatever they wanted and talk to me however they wanted and treat me however they wanted. And at that moment in time, I was not aware that I didn't have to put up with that, right? And so every day I went to school and I was treated miserably, and you know, a big side effect of that is I came home and I blew up. You know, I was angry all the time. I would punch holes in the wall and the door and all of this stuff, right? And so one night I was in my room and I had gotten one of those kitchen knives from the butcher block, and it had the two prongs on the end, and it was like the jagged edge. Like, that was not gonna go very well anyways. But I grabbed that and I put it under my pillow. And I remember just crying out to God. Because, you know, I grew up in church. I was at church pretty much every Sunday. I was in all the plays and the things that we did when we were kids and all of that stuff. I was in everything. My mom was super involved in church at the time. And so we were doing anything and everything at the church, you know? And so I really had to confront God, because I thought to myself, if God really loved me, why would I be going through all this stuff? So I had finally had enough. And I said, God, if you don't show me that you're real, I'm going to kill myself tonight. And I had my hand under the pillow and I was gripping the handle of the knife when I said, as soon as I'm done saying those words, a knock on my door. My sister knocks on my door and she said, hey, I picked up this new CD. It has this song on here that I think you would really like. I just figured I'd drop it by so you can, I'm dating myself with the CD. But she was like, check it out. And I was like, okay, thank you. So I just put it on, right? And the song began to talk about, the song was called Are You Real? And the song began to talk about how this person's life was so messed up. And he was angry and upset. And the whole first verse was just about all the bad stuff going on. And then the chorus said, are you real? I need to know. I like cried out and I was like, that's how I feel, God. That's how I feel. If you're real, like, you're gonna have to show up here and do something. Regardless whether you believe the same way I do, and that's okay if you don't. No judgment here. But I felt the presence of God come. And I began to weep and just cry. And can I tell you that the next day, I went to school and I still got bullied. But you know what? I knew that God was with me. And for me, in that moment, that's all I needed to get me through it. I'm so glad I didn't do it. So glad I didn't do it. And I've had so many great things happen between then and now, and I have a beautiful wife, and we're about to have a baby. My life is good, and God has made it good. And so I'm thankful that I'm still here, and I'm thankful that I am able to share this with you as well, so that you can hear that I made it through it.
Yeah.
So you can too.
I think I had a little bit of a different experience than Christian did. I was not raised in the church, and I went through quite a bit of sexual abuse when I was younger, and that just kind of led to me just seeking validation and affirmation of my identity in relationships that were just really unhealthy. Ended up in a relationship my freshman year of high school that was just really unhealthy and was just very abusive, physically, emotionally, mentally, just not a good situation for, a 14, 15-year-old to be going through. And I was with this person for, I think, a year, and we finally broke up under these really crazy circumstances. I was uninvited to a trip to go visit his family overseas because I had changed my hair color, and they said if I didn't dye my hair color back to the way that it was, then I wasn't welcome to go on the trip. And that was just kind of like the final thing for me, that I was like, this is so controlling and I just can't be a part of this anymore. We broke up. I was devastated. I mean, I just was like hysterical. I knew it was the right thing to do, but when you're that age, like, your understanding and your world is very small because you are a child, you are a student, and that's about it. Like, your roles and identities are very small and very minimal. And so when something happens, like, I was a daughter, a student, and a girlfriend. Like, those were my 3 roles. And so when this role was completely taken away, destroyed, and so much of my identity was rooted in that, like, it rocked my world, y'all. That just kind of started this role. And I had already been dealing with just some depression and anxiety just with school and with friends. I dealt with some bullying growing up as well. It was a little bit different because I was in high school by this time, and so girls can be really mean, and I found myself dealing with just these very violent and aggressive suicidal thoughts, and I just was coming to the end of myself. Like, I had been dealing with just nightmares, night terrors, day terrors, like seeing things, hearing things, just all of this insanity. And I just was at the end of myself, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. And so, unfortunately, I did not have any scope of understanding about God. And I did not have any scope of understanding about the value of my life. And so I attempted to take my life. Fortunately, I was unsuccessful, and God spared me, and I'm so thankful for that. That started years of trauma and issues, and not just for myself, but for my mom and for my little sister. And it was just a cycle for years of me trying to commit suicide. I would be put into a psychiatric hospital, which just bred more trauma and more, just horrible things that I had to experience and see in those places. And getting put on medication, and then the medication didn't work, and I'd have a bad side effect, and I'd try to commit suicide again. And this was years that this went on. And so finally, I had my last hospitalization. I was assaulted by a nurse technician that worked there. I got out of the hospital and filed police reports and ended up flying to Minnesota. And when I was there, I encountered God for the first time, for really, really the first time. And I gave my heart to the Lord, and everything changed. My outlook changed. My understanding of myself and my worth and my life and the value of my breath just completely changed. Now, like Christian said, I returned to Texas because I had just gone up there for a trip. I returned to Texas, and I'd love to tell you that the nightmares stopped and the anxiety attacks stopped and I stopped having the suicidal thoughts and all these things. It did not stop. But I was better equipped to handle it. And I had a better understanding, like I said, about the value of my life. And so I have spent the last 10 years fighting for my life and fighting for my mental health and fighting for my peace. And I can tell you that where I stand today, it is light years better and easier and simpler, and I'm more equipped than I was even 5 years ago, than I was 2 years ago, than I was 8 years ago. And so, like Christian said, we're coming from a place of understanding. We're coming from a place of experience, and it's not easy and it's not fun to walk through these things. And we wish that no one else would ever have to deal with that. No one else would ever have to have these thoughts take over your heart and your mind and your body. And so our hope is that if you're watching this and you're with us today and you're a part of this conversation and you're dealing with this, then you would find some encouragement in what we're bringing to you today, and that you would find some hope, and that you would find some power to fight this thing that's trying to take you out. And so we want to just bring you a little bit of encouragement. Number one, I want you to know that God is not mad at you. He's not ashamed of you. He is not embarrassed. He is not afraid of these big feelings and big questions and the yelling and just all of the big that is depression, and all of the big that is anxiety, and all of the big that is bipolar disorder, and all of the big that is schizophrenia, and all of the big that is borderline personality disorder. We can name all of the mental illnesses and struggles that there are on this topic, and that can lead to suicide attempts. God is not afraid. He is not shrinking back against any of that. And we want you to know that you are seen, and that you are loved, and that you are not alone, and that we know that the voice inside of your head is trying to convince you that this life is not worth it, and that you are not worth it, and that everyone around you would be better off if you weren't here anymore. And that is a lie. That is a lie. You are valuable, and you are important, and your life has worth, and there's a purpose for the breath that's in your lungs. There's a destiny for your life. God has plans for you, and that even though right now it might feel really dark, and it might feel really heavy, and it might feel really scary, I promise you that this is just a moment, and that it will get better.
So the first one is Psalms 34, 17 and 18. It says, "The Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed."
That's really good.
I can tell you, my heart was broken and I was crushed when I was going through the severe bullying that I was going through. No one wanted to be my friend. No one even wanted to talk with me. No one even wanted to sit next to me in class, let alone be a partner to do a project together or whatever. I was crushed. I had no friends. I had no community, nothing. I had the people at my house, which was my family. And all I could do was get angry with them. I was crushed. But God was near. He came to me in this moment.
1 Peter 5:7. I'm going to read two versions. I'm going to read the NLT version, and then I'm also going to read the Passion Translation, because I think that that helps kind of give a more colorful picture of what the scripture says. So NLT says, "Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you." And then the Passion Translation says, pour out all your worries and stress upon him and leave them there, for he always tenderly cares for you. I think that's one thing that I know I have not always been great at and still am learning and growing in, is when I bring something to the Lord and I bring my anxieties and my stresses and my fears, especially with this process that we're going through right now, going through IVF, and I'm on day 13 of shots right now. I think sometimes I can bring it before the Lord, but then I want to take it back. I want to take control back. I want to try and figure it out on my own. I want to try and find the solution, and I take the control and I take the power and I take the trust back, honestly.
Yeah. And here comes all the anxiety and the overwhelm and the depression with it.
Back, right. And so I like that, just the expounding of that, like bring it to him and leave them there. Let God deal with it. Let him work those details. Let him work the things out. And then the last one, I think this is your favorite.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite verses. It's Joshua 1:9. It says, "This is my command." This is important. It's a command, right? "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go."
That's good.
Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be discouraged. God is with you.
We're not promising that if you do all of these things, that all of this is going to go away. But what we are saying is that if you follow these and you push against yourself, push against the depression, push against the anxiety, and try and walk these things out, that it will make you better equipped and stronger to be able to fight against this thing that's trying to take you out, this monster that's trying to take you out. So the first one is ask for help. Talk to someone that you trust. There are people in your life, even if you only have one friend. I'll tell you what, sometimes one friend is better than 20 friends. Talk to someone, reach out to someone. If you're struggling, if you're thinking about hurting yourself, if you're thinking about ending your life, or if you've already started and you're struggling with self-harm, please reach out to someone. We are huge. If you've been a part of this channel and you've been a part of our lives for more than 5 minutes, then you know that we are huge encouragers of therapy. Yep. There is power in having a safe place to go and talk about things, to process things, to work through things. And so ask for help. That's the first practical step that you can take. There are a lot of causes of depression and anxiety. There are a lot of causes for being in this position where you're thinking about ending your life and you're thinking about suicide. And some of them are external. Some of them are things that have happened to us. Some of them may be stressors that you're dealing with right now, maybe a job situation, financial situation, an issue with your family. But also, sometimes there's a chemical imbalance in your brain. And sometimes you need to go to a doctor and get medication so that you can have that imbalance addressed and dealt with so that you can be functioning the way that God created you to. And I want to challenge you, because I think that there's some people that are super against medication, especially in regards to mental health. And I will tell you, be super cautious. Make sure that you're going to a doctor that you trust and to somebody that you know, and be open and honest with the doctor if you have any adverse side effects or feel kind of off when you take them, because unfortunately we are still not far enough in medicine where they can give you a blood test and say, okay, these are the exact medications that are going to work for you, and this is great. Sometimes it's trial and error. But I want to challenge you in something. If you knew someone, if there was someone in your life that was diagnosed with cancer and the doctor said, we're gonna have to do chemo and radiation so that we can get rid of this cancer, would you tell them, oh man, you got to have more faith in that? You've got enough strength and you've got enough faith. Don't you trust God to take that cancer from you? Of course not. Of course not. We would never say that to someone. We would say, you know what? You do the chemo, you do the radiation. We're going to continue to pray and believe and speak life over your body and trust that God is going to meet us and he's going to do the rest of the work, right? And so this is no different than that. If you have a chemical imbalance in your brain and you need medication, there is no shame in that. There is nothing wrong with you. You don't need to be embarrassed about that. I have an as-needed anxiety medication that I keep on hand. If I start having a panic attack in a situation, or I start feeling like my anxiety and stress is getting out of control, I take that and it helps level me out, because sometimes my chemicals can get out of whack.
And I also take a depression medication with even like a supplement that goes with it to like help for what they found that works really well for me. And on top of that, I take Adderall for ADHD. I was diagnosed just a couple years ago. I had no idea in my whole life that I went this whole time. And when I was diagnosed, he was like, "You're on the furthest part of the spectrum. Like, you're way past the scale." Like,
yeah, he said it's a miracle you graduated.
It's a miracle that he's like, "How are you even here? Like, the fact that you've been able to do." And I said, "Well, you don't know what you don't know, right?" And so I take that so that I can function like a normal human being and not act like a crazy person, right?
And it has drastically improved your life, and it has drastically improved our marriage.
Yes.
And, a lot of relationships in your life, because they're doing what they're supposed to do, which is stabilizing those chemicals in your brain.
I was able to be, a leader, and, at our church back in Minnesota, I'm now currently a shift supervisor at Starbucks, and so I can function and do what I'm supposed to do in my normal day life because I take these medications that help me.
Right.
And I'm not going to apologize for that.
Yeah. Okay, number 2, make sure that you are drinking water and getting sleep. I know it sounds silly and that it sounds super like infant level thinking, honestly.
Right.
But those are elementary. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. I couldn't think of the word. But those are imperative. So much of our cognitive function relies on our body getting the nutrients and the things that it needs. The third one is go for a walk or exercise. If you move your body, you're going to release dopamines, which is going to help your brain feel better and snap you out of that dark, down thinking.
The absolute best time to take a walk is when you don't want to. And it's really hard. And it's really, I am not an exercise guy, okay? I don't know if you can tell, but I don't like to really do that. That's not my thing. There's some people that love going to the gym. It's all right for me, whatever, right? I want to be healthy, but I don't care about getting buff and whatever. But I can tell you that when I was really struggling with that at the time, Cherith was like, "Hey, why don't we go for a walk?" And it was just around the block. It wasn't like a big deal. It wasn't anything. Yeah. But I got out in the sun, and and I was able to, when you exercise, it releases dopamines in your brain, and it's a healthy thing.
Right.
It's a healthy version of that, and so it helped me, and it would make me feel better. By the time we got back home, I was kind of back to my old normal self again. Yeah.
And I think that also goes with the next one, which is number 4: get outside. Being outside, getting some sun on you, feeling the air, there is something powerful about just being in nature and just being outside. And something that there's new research and evidence that's coming out, you can look it up online, for something called grounding, which is basically, there's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but the main way that I'm talking about is just getting your feet on the grass, getting your bare feet on the grass, on the ground, dirt, whatever, just get your feet to the earth, because Earth's natural electric charge stabilizes things in our body, and which should be no surprise to us. God created all of this, so of course us just touching the ground, think about Adam and Eve, they were out there walking around naked.
Yeah, no shoes.
And so, no shoes, and so there's some power in that, and so there is evidence that shows if you ground, and I think it's for at least 5 minutes, it reduces inflammation in your body, reduces chronic pain, chronic stress, improves blood flow, improves energy, improves sleep, and just generates an overall greater well-being. Number 5, journal. Something that my therapist, an exercise that he has me go through is if I'm feeling super overwhelmed and stressed, or there's a lot of things that are bouncing around in my mind, he has me write them down, and then he has me assign action to them. I think a lot of times we can get so overwhelmed in our thoughts, and it's hard for us to see what can I even do about this? But when we put it down on paper and then we take them one at a time and assign an action one at a time, that helps our brain to be able to focus, to be able to function, and to be able to think through, okay, this feels really big, but now I can see I just have to do this one thing, and then that's going to help me move through it.
The next one, number 6, is confessions, the power of the tongue. Now, there's a lot of people, different religions, different scientific backgrounds, all of that stuff. Scientifical, did I say that?
Yeah.
I like to make my own words. Scientific, that's the word I'm looking for. All agree that when we speak positively, positive things happen. And really what it means, for me is that not that like I can't talk about the fact that my head hurts right now or that I'm depressed.
Right.
But what it is that I'm reminding myself on who I am. Yeah,
that's good.
What you're doing is you're not trying to like say all of these things so that you can feel like Superman.
Right.
What you're trying to do is bring yourself back to the reality of you're just a person who is trying to do their best.
There was another study that was done that found that anxiety and gratitude cannot function in the brain at the same time. And so if you're feeling anxious, the greatest thing that you can do is to start speaking and practicing gratitude. And so sometimes that's just going, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious, all these things, like I have all these things to do, I feel really bad about myself, or what is the point of all of this life? And then going, hold on a second. I'm grateful that there's food in my fridge. I'm grateful that there's breath in my lungs. I'm grateful that I have, money in my bank account. I'm grateful that I have a husband that loves me. I'm grateful for my dogs. And just stopping yourself, like interrupting the chaos and going, hold on, I got to recenter myself. Okay, number 7, manage what you're consuming. Another study that we heard about and that we taught to our teenagers in Minnesota said that the first 20 minutes of your day, whatever you do the first 20 minutes of your day, dictates how the rest of your day is going to go. So whatever you watch, whatever you listen to, whatever you're speaking, whatever is happening that first 20 minutes is going to dictate how the rest of the day goes. So we want to encourage you to manage what you're consuming. Like if you're feeling really depressed and you're feeling suicidal thoughts and all of these things, it's probably not a good idea to be watching TV shows or movies or listening to podcasts that are about suicide or that are about murder or that are about, demonic things and like crazy, like whatever.
Yeah.
The best thing that you can be doing is watching shows and consuming content and reading, listening to things that are uplifting, encouraging. Put on a comedy, like something that is going to uplift you rather than feed the negativity that you're already feeling on the inside of you.
And if you're a Christian, listening to a message, reading the Bible, praying, worshiping, whatever, is your thing, but like do the positive version of consumption so that way you can get the bad stuff out of your head.
Yeah, that's really good. And then our last practical step is be around people.
Yep.
The biggest lie and the biggest obstacle that we have to overcome when we're dealing with these thoughts is isolation.
Yeah.
And the enemy of our soul, the enemy of this life, he is here to steal, kill, and destroy. He wants to take you out, and he wants you isolated, because if he can get you isolated, then he can get you to believe every lie. He can get you to believe that your life is invaluable, that you're not worth it, that this thing is not worth fighting for, and that it's time to give up. And so fight against that temptation to be alone. Fight against that temptation to be isolated. And instead reach out to the people around you. Get out of the house. Go be around people. If that's church on Sunday, if it's a small group, if it's just going to the movies with somebody, whatever that looks like for you, just get out and be around other people.
So the next thing we want to talk to you guys about is really just how to be supportive. And this is kind of more aimed towards people who haven't really dealt with this as a reoccurring issue, or even something that like they felt like they've really ever struggled in. And for people who haven't gone through something you don't understand, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, in situations like this, it's ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
However, though, there are people experiencing this around you, and we want you to be able to help and handle those situations when they come up, and be able to be supportive. And so the first thing that you can do to be supportive is to check on your people. So these are the people around you, your sphere of influence, or even just like your family unit, right? Yeah. For me, my number one priority is my wife, So I'm going to check in on her. Hey, how you doing? You doing all right? And it doesn't have to be a big thing.
Right.
Like, it doesn't have to be awkward or weird. And,
right.
A lot of times when people are going through this, they usually will say something to some degree that kind of hints that they're going through something like this. Mm-hmm. And just be like aware and awake to that, and try to be kind.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't say anything, which is the purpose in checking in on people. Sometimes it's the person that seems like the strongest person in your life and the most confident person in your life that is dealing with these things behind the scenes. And so it's just about being awake, being aware, keeping your eyes open, noticing behavior more than words and more than what's being kind of projected out, because a lot of times, again, people can be laughing and acting like everything's good and like, hi, everything's great, but then if you notice that they're not doing the things that they normally enjoy doing, or you start to notice that they're kind of withdrawing or not maybe texting you back or not returning your phone calls, like, pay attention to the actions and just do a check-in. Hey, are you doing okay? Is everything all right? How are you feeling? Do you need anything? And this brings us to our second point, which is the power of presence. This is something that we believe in. This is something that we practice, and it's really simple. It's just being around. A lot of times we can have people really close to us or people that we know going through situations that we don't know how to respond to and we don't know how to bring resolution to. I think naturally as humans, we want to fix things. And when you're close with someone that is going through something like depression, anxiety, dealing with suicidal thoughts, there is not a way for you to fix it. Right. And so instead of focusing your energy on trying to address or fix what's going on, focus your energy on just being present, being around, and doing what you say and saying what you mean. Something that we've experienced a lot is people saying words that are really well-meaning, but they have no depth behind them. And so a lot of times people will say things like, if you ever need anything, let me know. Hey, if you guys need anything, just give me a call. I'll be there in a second. Or even, I'll be praying for you, right? But then they don't ever pray. Or when you do need something, you call them and then they don't answer, or they don't show up. Or when you say the thing that you need, they act like it's a real inconvenience for them to do whatever that thing is. And so we want to encourage you to practice doing what you say you're going to do and saying what you mean.
So number 3 is to validate their feelings. We want to encourage them with truth.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think a lot of times maybe if we're not going through it, it's not as a big deal to us or whatever. Kind of like what we were talking about with teenagers. Yes. And how their world can be crashing down around them. And for us, it's like you broke up with your boyfriend that you guys were together for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Right. Like, and it's one of those things where it's like, just because those feelings are there doesn't mean that they have to be right or wrong. It's just the fact that they're there.
Right.
I think it's Jimmy Evans said.
Pastor Jimmy Evans.
Yeah, Pastor Jimmy Evans said, you don't have to understand them to validate them. My feelings might not be right, but they are real.
Yeah.
And I think that comes to a point of like thinking about perspective and like putting yourself in other people's shoes. If the only thing you've ever known is gone, then you're going to be freaking out, right? Mm-hmm. And so here's the deal, is that if someone is going through something, even if they're wrong, right? Even if they're freaking out and they're wrong and whatever, it doesn't mean that you can't still be there for them and validate them and love them and say, hey, listen, I don't understand your feelings because, XYZ or whatever, but I do validate the fact that you're feeling that way, right. And I'm really sorry that you're feeling that way. Is there anything that I can do to help you?
Right. And bringing them back to the encouragement of like speaking truth into those things. So like, obviously we know if anybody, it doesn't matter who they are, says my life is not valuable and so I'm going to kill myself because I am not worth living. I'm not worth breathing, right? We know that feeling is not right. That is not a correct feeling, right? Because we know that the word says that everybody was created in the image of God, that he has a purpose and a plan for their life, right? And so instead of telling them like, oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous, like don't think like that, don't feel that way, just get over it, oh, just forget it, just you need to have more faith, whatever, and minimizing the feelings, instead of doing that, go, you know what, like Christian said, I don't understand what that feels like, but I can tell that this feels really real to you and feels really big to you. And I'm so sorry that you're going through that right now. But I just want to remind you that I love you, and my life would be drastically different if you weren't here. And so I need you here, and your family needs you here, and your friends need you here. And I know that it feels really big and heavy right now, but tomorrow is going to be better than it was today. And then the last thing, number 4, is just pointing them back to the practical steps that we talked about a few minutes ago. If you know someone that is dealing with depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, encourage them to get out of the house. Offer to go on a walk with them. Send them funny memes and videos that you've seen online, or a good podcast that you listened to that was super encouraging. Like, bring them back to the practical things. Check in with them. Have you been drinking water? How have you been sleeping at night? And
pick them up for, like give them a ride and go have dinner or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Just anything on that list that are super practical things, encourage them to do those things, because that's what's going to help get their mind back on the right track.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, I think that's everything that we have.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you being a part of the conversation. I know that this was kind of a long video, but we just are super passionate about this, and we just want you to be equipped and empowered to know that you are going to make it through this moment, that you are loved and that you are seen, and that, like Christian said earlier, it's okay that you're not okay, but you don't have to stay there. And so we love you. If there's anything that we can do to encourage you through this moment, please comment below, find us on Facebook, shoot us a message. We're both on Instagram as well. We would love to talk to you and encourage you. And yeah. Awesome, guys. We love you. Thank you so much. And we will see you soon. Love you.
Love you.